Anna's mom interview. Go! Es fehlen mein Schatz.
Aber Schatz, du schneidest das nachher, oder?
Yeah, natürlich. That's just like too, like if when we're looking through the things, we know which video it is. Because I say it at the first thing.
Okay.
Also, the first question is, how old were you when the Berlin Wall was... What? Wait, hold on. Okay.
So English? Do I need to speak English?
How?
Okay, that's fine.
You can do it.
Would you like me to give you a little bit of a German accent so make it more authentic?
Quatsch!
Also, dann leg mal los.
Okay. How old were you when the Berlin Wall fell down? And what were you doing where were you when you found out? And what was your reaction?
I was 16 years old. I was an exchange student in Woodinville, Washington, so outside of Seattle. And we turned on the evening news. The father, my host, of my host sister, he turned on the evening news and it said the wall had fallen. Yeah, it was quite something. And so we saw the pictures of people climbing on top of the very same wall that was only like days before guarded by soldiers with rifles, long rifles, which I had seen personally a year before when we visited Berlin.
Was it scary?
So I saw the soldiers going back and forth, patrolling along the Berlin Wall, which was at the time behind a barrier. So there was another wired, like a fence around the wall, so you couldn't even get to the wall. But then we saw the pictures of people on top of the wall celebrating. So that was really amazing. And so it was my host father at the time who said, "We must call your parents, we have to hear what they think." And so it was 7 o'clock in, or 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock in, or maybe 5 o'clock, I don't remember. So it was later in the day in Woodinville in Washington, in the Pacific Northwest, which meant it was 9 hours later in Germany. And so we called, and I think it was pretty late. It must have been like 11 o'clock at night. I think we threw them out of bed, actually. I think they were already in bed. But my host father insisted that we must call them. I must call them right now. So, okay, if you want me to call them. At the time, calling from the United States to Germany was still very expensive. So it was like $100 just to talk for 20 minutes. And $100 was a lot of money at the time. Yeah. So that's the answer to that question.
Okay. Wait, what did you say to them? Like, and how did they react?
Well, my father was, like he told you, he was hesitant. He couldn't really believe something like that because it was closed for so many years.
Crunch.
Yeah, it was like, they talk a lot and who knows, tomorrow's going to be closed again. And then I think my host father also wanted to know what he thinks about German reunification. I was like, maybe not that day, but soon after we asked him. I was like, it's never gonna happen. Oh.
And it happened.
And then it happened in 1990.
How did you feel about the Berlin Wall?
It was a very scary feeling to be there. It was very scary.
Why do you think that is?
Because we knew that people crossing the wall would be shot at. So, and those soldiers were not joking. And I'm not sure, I think whether they were even East German soldiers. Yeah, I think maybe East German, these were East German soldiers. But fundamentally, they were for the longest time these were Allied soldiers that were
enforcing the border.
in Berlin. I don't remember. I don't remember. But it was very scary because and they always looked very serious, and so I was only a child. I was as old as you.
Oh, you were 72 years old?
No,
As
like
old as
you.
I am? No, I'm 72 years old.
Oh, you were 72?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. How did you?
Okay. Are you gonna include that in your documentary as well, that you were 72 years old?
Yeah, I'll put it in like the bloopers.
Okay.
How did it affect the people around you? How did the Berlin Wall affect the people around you? I guess how did
Well,
how did it affect your
before
family?
or after? When it was still up, or afterwards?
I guess both.
So before, it just meant that we couldn't travel. It was very difficult to travel. We could travel without permission, without getting a visa. So you had to actually apply for a visa to go to East Germany, and if you did, then I think they made it also really complicated. They were very wary of anyone in East Germany receiving visitors from the West. And in fact, you always had to be sure, you had to expect that you'll be spied on. So it was something that people tried to hide when they had visitors from the West. And yes, you were definitely spied on. So this was like, nobody would just let you in and you could just do whatever you want. You would go there and essentially you would have like a shadow
Oh my gosh!
follow you.
Oh my gosh! Did you hear stories of people who were doing
Yeah, well, there was the Stasi.
what's the Stasi?
The Stasi was der Staatssicherheitsdienst. So this was a gigantic surveillance state force. It was 150,000 East Germans were registered either like employed or like assets for the Staatssicherheitsdienst. And now you have to remember that East Germany only had maybe 15 million people or 20 million people. So if you have 150,000 people spying on each other, so every block had a spy to keep everybody in line. And so one story, for example, I heard from a colleague of mine with whom I worked later as a resident in Freiburg. He grew up in East Germany. So one of the things that happened to him is there was the singer Udo Lindenberg, and he came to East Germany, but he was a Western singer, so he was allowed to go to East Germany and sing. So it was very popular. His music was very popular in East Germany, and they traded his vinyls on the black market. So it was very popular, but it was forbidden fundamentally. So you couldn't really get it. So you had to trade it on the black market. I think at one point he even came and gave a concert and wasn't too well received by the government. But anyway, so what this colleague of mine did is he was like old as your age, exactly pretty much your age. He was 16 years old, and so he was out 15 years. He was 16, around that age.
Okay.
So he was at a party at some point. He was singing one of his songs, one of the Udo Lindenberg songs, some of which were politically very critical. They were politically incorrect in Eastern Germany. And so then his director or they had a youth organization where all the youth would go. I forget forget what his name was. So they would organize the East German youth. He would call him in his office and ask him, "Hey Herrlich, I heard that you want to go to medical school. I also heard that you were heard singing Udo Lindenberg's song such and such. I think you should consider that if you want to go to medical school, you should not be singing his songs in public." Okay, I understood, comrade. Understood, comrade. And so he never did it again, and he did go to medical school. Actually, he went on to the gymnasium, which is what you needed in order to go to medical school. I forget whether I think he did go to medical school in the East at the beginning, but then he transferred. He was younger, so he actually transferred to the West.
So crazy, Mama. That's such a crazy story.
Well, sadly enough, I'm not sure when you want to take that into the documentary, because it's equally politically incorrect in this country, is that unfortunately
Mama.
they hired
Mama, it's okay. Mama, it's okay. Mama, it's okay.
the Department of Homeland Security hired
It's okay.
the Stasi folks to staff the Department of Homeland Security.
Okay.
Just so you know, it's not forgotten. Okay.
Okay. Anyway.
Did I just ruin your documentary? Probably.
Vielleicht. Mama, meine Freundin sieht das.
Well, they should know that. It's a reality. You can
Whatever.
read it up.
Whatever.
You can.
Whatever.
Okay. You could cut it out.
I'll cut it out.
You should still tell your friends so that at least your friends know.
Okay.
Okay.
Um.
Because that time is not over. It's only like we only think it's over.
Was it surprising that the wall stayed as long? Was it surprising that the wall stayed up as long as it did?
I had no frame of reference, so I had no idea.
Oh, well, like, because it stayed your whole
So
life.
a surprise would imply that I expected it to be there forever. And I guess I did. I didn't think it was just a reality, so I didn't wonder, I didn't think about it going down. So it came as a surprise, I guess. Because nobody was talking about it. People were not talking about it. However, there were demonstrations every Monday in East Germany. There were demonstrations already in the fall of 1989. And there were East Germans escaping to the embassy, the West German embassy of Hungary already at the time. So people were actually trying to leave, and there was some kind of relaxation going on of the rules.
The Iron Curtain.
Yeah. So people would come via Hungary, they would come to West Germany actually.
Cool.
Yeah. So people that were trying to leave, which was before it was not possible. Like even if you had like your husband and your child being in the West, they would not allow you to go join the family, which is really cool. Which is really, really cool. Which meant essentially that nobody would go by themselves. Like no father would go, okay, I'm going to go to the West, because they knew they would never be able to take wife and child. So it would mean abandoning your own family. So that was a way for them to control that people wouldn't escape. Or at least one more deterrent.
What do you think the wall symbolized, or like when it was up and you were still like a teenager? What do you think the wall symbolized, and like how did you and the people around you view it?
Well, it was as if the world ended at the wall for us. Like it is, imagine you are, you live on an earth that's flat, and like once you get to the border, it ends. Because you could not go beyond it. We did not know, I did not know anything about it. So it was like a white spot on the map. The entire Eastern bloc, the entire East bloc was was like we would know the maps of the West. I know Spain, I know France, I knew England, I knew Italy, I knew Spain, I knew America, all of those things. But then it was like all I knew is that there is a place, and it was like completely blank. Same with, so all of the East, including China and the communist, like
Party there.
Vietnam and stuff.
The CCP. The Chinese
Yeah.
Communist Party.
Yeah, so the all of, like, it was like, imagine like you look at the map of the world and the parts completely blanked out. Like it was like complete secret. Like we would not know what is actually happening behind the wall.
So crazy. Do you remember any other major events around that time? Like what was happening at the time in 1989? Like
Personally or globally?
Like globally, or if you guys graduated next year or something.
Yeah, well, I was in Woodinville in the fall of 1989, and then I remember the 2+4 talks where people in, I think that was 1990.
And like referring to 1984, referring to the book 1984.
No, that was in 1990. The 2+4 talks. These were negotiations between East Germany, West Germany, and then the big allied powers about reunification. And actually, at that time, something people like to forget, at that time, the agreement between the Russians and the Americans, like the agreement between all, in fact, was that the Russians would allow reunification under the condition that, there's no NATO expansion beyond the Oder-Neisse Grenze, East Germany. They kind of forgot about that like 4 years later, 8 years later.
Classic Soviet move. I mean, the Soviet Union was what?
No, that was the United States of America.
Oh.
Sorry, Schatz.
It couldn't. The USA wouldn't, because the USA was NATO.
NATO promised to not expand further east than Oder-Neisse, which was the border between East Germany and Poland.
Okay.
So they said, so the Russians agreed, the Soviet Union at the time agreed to say, okay, fine, we're fine with you with a reunification, which was a big deal for them because it meant that they withdrew all their troops from East Germany. They also meant they withdrew all their influence. So they essentially disappeared from East Germany. And the Americans and everybody else from the West moved in, West Germans first and foremost. And so NATO, which meant the NATO border went from the wall that divides East and West, went to East Germany. And then NATO kept expanding until now. They want Ukraine also to be part of NATO and Finland part of NATO. So the border of NATO has, in the past 30 years, has gone from going through Germany all the way out to Ukraine, more or less.
That's it. Yay! Do I give a thumbs up, high five?
Ja, well done.
Du hast die Mama zum Reden bekommen.